Subscribers to NewOrleans.Football get early access to all of our podcasts, our news, our analysis, and so much more. Make sure you are signed up to NewOrleans.Football. Use the code NOF to save 20% on your first payment. Welcome back to another episode of NewOrleans.Football presented by PJ's Coffee. We are coming to you from the Ochsner Health Podcast Studio. Shout out to Ochsner for coming on as a sponsor. Their support is going to help us go out, cover training camp, take the whole crew, keep doing what we're doing. So thank you to them for believing in what we're doing. And if you have medical needs, make sure you check out their vast network. We're going to break down our top 21 today. So we're going to go through that, the first step of it. We're going to reveal the first few guys on those lists. We're going to keep that rolling throughout the week. So make sure you stay tuned in for that to find our reasoning on who those players are. And we're going to hit on some other topics today. We are coming to you from that studio, which is right next door to my guy, Matt Bowers, on Veterans Memorial Boulevard. And if you need a new car, make sure you check him out at one of his many locations all throughout the region. They have great prices, great customer care, great service. So if you're buying a new car or a pre-owned car, make sure you check them out today. All right, we'll be right back after this quick word from our sponsors.
Ochsner Health inspires healthier lives and stronger communities through a combination of standard-setting expertise, quality, and connection not found anywhere else in the region. To learn more about how Ochsner empowers people to get well and stay well, visit ochsner.org. Long live you.
The NewOrleans.Football show is proudly presented by PJ's Coffee. PJ's Coffee has some of the best drinks that you can find. They have locations all over the city. They have pastries and everything else you need to get your day started. So go check them out. Time for a new watch? Go check out Friend & Company Fine Jewelers' wide array of Breitling watches at their showroom on Maple Street. They have every type of watch that you want, and they can get you right for any type of occasion. And while you're there, check out their engagement salon. They'll make sure you find the perfect ring for that special someone. Their experienced staff offer 5-star customer care to help you find the perfect watch, ring, or whatever else you're looking to buy. Visit them today. Friend & Company Fine Jewelers, 7713 Maple Street between Adams and Burdett, 504-866-5433, or visit them at friendandcompany.com. Looking for the best insurance coverage at the lowest price? Look no further than Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency. They are a local independent insurance agency right here in New Orleans, specializing in home, flood, and auto insurance. Their agents are born and raised in the area and understand our community's unique needs and the homeowners insurance crisis our residents are currently in. At Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, their dedicated team will shop every available carrier in the market, ensuring you get the most comprehensive coverage at the lowest possible price. They know your time is valuable, which is why they work diligently to provide you with the quotes as soon as possible. Why settle for less when you can have the best? Trust Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, to protect what matters most to you. I do. I've been a client of theirs since 2021. When we couldn't find someone to insure our house because of the big oak tree growing over top, Chabert worked until they found someone that would work with us and give us the protection that we need to feel safe in our new home. Call them today at 504-326-6526 or visit them online at Protected by Chabert. That's 504-326-6526. Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, your local insurance experts. Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. Blended in New Orleans, it is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. NewOrleans.Football is proud to be sponsored by Firehouse Subs. Make sure you check out their location on Veterans Boulevard. All right, let's get into the show. I'm Nick Underhill here with Mike Triplett and Brandon Thomas, and it's now time for the lead presented by Friend & Company Fine Jewelers. Friend & Company Fine Jewelers are the official jewelers of the New Orleans Saints, and they should be the official home of your next timepiece. Make sure you go there and check out their array of Breitling watches. They got all different types of watches that'll get you right for any type of occasion. And while you're there, check out their engagement salon. Buy that ring that you've been wanting to get for that special someone. Pop the question and get your love story started right with our friends over at Friend & Company Fine Jewelers.
Lead topic, Saints roster rankings, numbers 21 through 15. It's another annual tradition here at NOF, going through the roster, putting a list together and see who are the top 21 players on the team. Now, this isn't solely based on their performance from last year. This isn't where we think they're going to be this year. This is a ranking just on the person and their career. So, as of 2024 going into the season, who do we have? Let's start off with number 21, Nathan Shepard.
Yeah, it wasn't positive he would make my list when I started putting this together. I think I ended up with him at number 20. It's kind of the definition of solid but unspectacular. But I think he was quietly a little better. And I'm going to let Nick talk on this because Nick's been pointing this out a lot. He definitely ended up having the better season than Colin Saunders, who got a little bit more hype when they signed those 2 defensive tackles last year. He started all 17 games, career high 3.5 sacks, career high 50 tackles. And he's pretty versatile. I think he can be your nose next to Brian Bresee. He can play three technique if that's the lineup you're going with, 6'4", 315. What do you like about him, Nick?
I think he's just a solid player. Like he's been good. Like they signed him to a 3-year, $15 million contract. As you mentioned, 3.5 sacks. That's a good number for a DT. It's just such a weird season. They had 2 guys that put up decent numbers at those positions, and Brian Bresee didn't get enough hype. Nathan Shepard didn't get talked about at all. But, I mean, that was kind of the nature of the season, too, where kind of seeing these, like, little bright spots when they're kind of struggling to get to 9 wins. It's hard to see a Nathan Shepard shine through, whereas I think in a more positive season, you're looking at it and you're like, oh, that was a solid find. Like, he came in, he did his thing. The other thing is Nathan Shepard, he's not a big talker. Like, so he doesn't get written about a lot, you know? So that's another thing that kind of puts it a little bit under the radar. But, you know, I think he had a good season. 25 pressures. You mentioned good against the run, good pass rusher. I think he did his job, and I think they got their money's worth out of him.
When we came together to put the overall list together, I looked at it and I was like, dang, I left Shepard off. I had Kool-Aid McKinstry at 21 originally because he can be a starter on this team, and that will put him at the top. But I think Shepard, like you all said, he's a very solid player, and he deserves to be number 21 on this list. Now, let's go to the next player, Willie Gay at 20.
Yeah, I had him even a little higher on my list, a couple ahead of a couple more. And this is just one of those somebody else's treasure, you know, like I don't think it's somebody else's trash could become the Saints' treasure. I actually think if like the Chiefs reporters were getting together, I wonder if he'd be more of a kind of one of those number 15 guys for them that everyone just kind of, it just feels like whenever you read about him, whenever you hear their fans or their reporters talking about him, he was just a really appreciated sort of like number 3 linebacker for them. And he would make plays. I mean, he started number 3 linebacker, but he started 47 of the 57 career games he played, obviously won 2 Super Bowls with them, started 15 games last year, played about 60% of their snaps. Saints don't do that with their 3rd linebacker, but he has 4 career interceptions, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He makes plays here and there, known as a really good spy, known as a good athlete. I picked him over some of the other rotational players like Nathan Shepard, like 3rd defensive back that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And I don't know how many snaps he's going to get to play if he doesn't beat out Pete Werner for the starting job here, but I think he'll be the kind of guy who makes an impact in small doses.
I had Blake Grupe on my list, and then I put Willie Gay on my list, and I had Blake Grupe on my list, and I put Willie Gay on my list. I put Willie Gay ultimately at 21 just because it feels like he's going to have some type of impact this year, but without knowing really what it is, it's tough for me to project it. I mean, there's a reality where, like, if Pete Werner's great this year, like, Willie Gay might not see the field too much. Right. So I think he will. I think they'll find a way to use him because he's a good player, and you're going to want to find a way to get those guys on the field. But I just don't know. I don't know what the role is yet. But he could definitely be someone that at the end of the season, he's a top 12 guy, top 15 guy, whatever. Like, I could see it going that way, too, if Pete Werner doesn't kind of hold down his spot. So, yeah, I mean, look, I think he's going to be a good player. You already hear him at practices, a lot of energy. I think he's going to be, like, a good glue guy. I think he's going to be, like, I think there's kind of I think a good comp is like a better version of Quan Alexander. I think he could ultimately end up being that.
Sure, that's a good. Well, we do remember we had ESPN analyst Matt Bowen on our show earlier this year. He had Willie Gay as his favorite value signing in free agency of the entire NFL. So we don't know exactly what he'll do, but a lot of people like the spark he's provided.
Willie Gay not being a for sure starter on this team took him off of my list, and so I added somebody on here who isn't on our overall list, but he has the potential. Who
was your other guy? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Tight end.
Juwan Johnson. Yeah, Juwan Johnson was much higher on this list.
Juwan didn't make the list. Year. I didn't have him on my list.
We'll get into that a little bit later.
We are going to mention him later.
Interesting.
But yeah, Willie could easily, if he plays, he's easily taking that spot for me. Now let's go. You mentioned the 3rd cornerback, Alontae Taylor at number 19.
Alontae at 19, yeah. I mean, I think that's a fair spot. I had him at 18, so 1 spot higher. Look, Alontae is someone that I think has the talent to be a top 10, 12 player on this team. It's just becoming more consistent. He had the position switch last year. I don't think it like totally took maybe until later in the year. It'll be interesting to kind of see how he comes back and attacks it. You know, I think if he spent the offseason preparing to be that and embrace it, I think he could be great at it. You know, I also think he could be really good on the outside. It's just kind of putting all the tools together and making all those tools kind of construct the house. And if he builds that house, yeah, I mean, absolutely. But good player. I think the arrow is pointing up on him from 19.
I don't know if the arrow's pointing up. I think we actually ranked him higher last year because at the end of the year,
I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah.
But then not seeing him take that next step, and then the turbulence at the end of the season, got benched in the Rams game when he was getting torched, but then he comes back with the first career interception. It was a great way to come back. Then he got benched again in week 18, and then he came back to play on the outside because I think got hurt, and he gets his second career interception. And you said all along, I mean, the talent is obvious, and he's kind of a victim of circumstance and situation here that they decided to try to make him work in the nickel because I think he would be a lot better on the outside. And here's an interesting one that is not in the script, but let me ask you guys real quick after you talk about Taylor. Because he's battling Kool-Aid McKinstry, possibly for that job, who plays more snaps this year, Alontae Taylor or Willie Gay?
Oh, I mean, if Alontae wins the job, he's
if he wins the job, but are we?
Well, if he doesn't win the job, then probably not. But I mean, I mean, I got him winning it until we see Kool-Aid on the field. We haven't seen Kool-Aid on the field.
Exactly.
You know, Alontae's someone I think his career could be interesting though. Like I could see him leaving here and then being really great somewhere else when he gets to play on the outside. Like
no question,
his skills and his tools are too good for me to kind of write him off. You know, there's a reality. Maybe it never all does come together, but I think it will at some point for him. And it ultimately might not end up being here. Like his time he might be on borrowed time already here with, you know, if they decide to keep the two outside guys in Kool-Aid, like there's going to be an odd man out. I don't think that's the reality of it. I don't think it is going to be a Debo and Lattimore long term, but I'm just saying like there is a path where like one of these guys, maybe two of them are going to end up out of here. And I would not be totally shocked to see him land on another team and be a great outside player.
When we were talking about the number 21 and how I had Kool-Aid up there, that meant I automatically had to put Alontae at 20 because they're in a battle right now for that slot corner position. And his years and experience put him ahead of him, but not by much because because they still haven't proven who's going to take that job yet. But I think 19 is a great place for Alontae to be because he has that potential if he develops in the slot. But we all know he's probably probably playing out of position.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, the arrow's up. Like I think the arrow's up on his personal development, but like who knows which way the arrow's going on his role with the team. Like those two things, he could keep getting better and just Kool-Aid might play more snaps. Like I have no idea how it's going to work out.
Speaking of Alontae Taylor, let's keep on that same track into our next segment presented by Hard High Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. We talked about Taylor and how he's at 19 now, but he was earlier at 17 on the list from last year. But two other players that were on last year's list that aren't on this year's list, Juwan Johnson and Jamal Williams. So who do you think out of those three is going to have a bounce-back season?
I would have picked Juwan Johnson as my answer for this. We did an episode a month ago, who you buying stock in, and Juwan Johnson might have been my first choice. But that was before the foot injury. I mean, he has the opportunity. They didn't bring in another tight end to top him. If he misses all of training camp, it's going to be hard to bet on him. Alontae Taylor's the young player on the rise in this group, but we just talked about not knowing what his, could he be the odd man out at that position? I mean, I would have never guessed that I was going to guess Jamal Williams here, but he might have the best path.
I think it is Jamal. I think Jamal's probably the one that feels like just can improve upon last year easiest. Yeah, absolutely. I think it is Jamal. It's disappointing. That's kind of a disappointing answer because like I think they're better if Juwan's just running away with it. They're better if Alontae's running away with it. They're better if Kendre Miller's ahead of Jamal long-term health-wise of the franchise. But I think right now, I mean, look, we're making an impression off of 6 practices in the spring, but like right now, that's the impression that's been formed based on what we saw.
Yeah, with the uncertainty with Alvin, Kendre not all the way there, Jamal has the clearest path.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still assuming like if we're fast-forwarding 12 months from now, I bet we're going to feel the best about Alontae. One way or another, he'll probably get on the field a lot this season. Someone will get hurt. Maybe he has to play outside. Maybe he plays inside. Maybe he beats out Kool-Aid. I still can't imagine like next year we're putting Jamal Williams number 15 on this list. So I guess I'll pick Alontae from that group, but it's a great question.
It's a weird. I don't even want to put the thought out there, but like if there's something that occurs that allows Alontae to be on the outside for a long time and get an extended look, like, and if he does well, like that would maybe not be the worst piece of knowledge to have.
Yeah,
No, definitely wouldn't. But let's continue on the list with number 18, JT Gray, the specialist.
You got to have him on here. Like he's
Right.
amazing at what he does. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of the full analysis.
Yeah.
JT is great at running down the field and not getting hit by other people. Like he's really good at that. And he's developed into like a solid depth safety too. Like I think when he goes into a game, like you aren't necessarily thinking the world's going to fall apart. And that's, he does a good job in his roles like that fourth, fifth safety.
It's funny. We used to do these lists separately for different outlets. And it reminds me of like Thomas Morstead. Like Morstead was always on the list because he was great at what he did. And just depending on how much talent there was on the roster, sometimes that would put him 13, sometimes that would put him 20. I think Gray was a couple spots lower. Now he's a couple spots higher just because of the depth of talent on this team. But JT Gray is just like a known commodity. First team All-Pro in 21, second team All-Pro in 19. Last year, I mean, we gave Lou Hedley so much crap, but the Saints led the NFL in fewest return yards allowed, fewest punt return yards allowed, top 5 of punts down inside the 20, and a good punt coverage guy has a lot to do with that.
Great battery. Yeah.
Definitely. His consistency for me put him at 15 because he doesn't really waver too much.
Can't even knock that. I mean, you could put him anywhere. Like he's
on
the
the-
best.
yeah.
He's among the best of what he does.
He's definitely on the list. Now, let's go to a new guy on the team. High potential. Taliese Fuaga. He's at number 17.
I never know what to do with first round picks. I think last year Brian Bresee came in at 21 on this list. But I think it's fair to have Fuaga ranked a little higher than Bresee was. He was drafted, 14 spots higher or 12 spots higher? And I think a lot of people ranked him inside their top 10. I think he plays an elite position on the offensive line. We had Eric McCoy in studio after OTAs and minicamp wrapped up, and he was pretty wowed by what he saw and how smoothly he made that transition to left tackle. And I think there's a guy who's going to rank higher than number 17 on this list every year going forward for the next decade.
Yeah, I think this is a fair spot for him. It's kind of like the very first spot of people that we think are going to be like everybody on here after this is going to be every down kind of starter, big role type players, and everybody below here, like Alontae lost his job last year. They brought in somebody to compete with him. JT Gray, special teamer. Nathan Shepard, just kind of, a solid
rotational guy,
team.
even as a full-time starter.
Willie Gay might or might not, like I think there's just kind of some uncertainty with some of those other guys. Like this is kind of like the baseline of, all right, like going up from here, like these are the guys that are going to play all the time. I expect them to be good, and I expect them to be higher on the list next year.
Definitely. I have Fuaga at 18. Him at 17 is even better. I think, honestly speaking, him being able to make that switch off the rip, not even having a chance to play at right in the NFL and automatically going to left means that the investment in the coaching staff is making in him is very high. He could possibly, fill those shoes of different past Saints that have been great because of his mental ability so far, but we'll have to see when the pads come on. Now let's go to number 16, Brian Bresee. Mike, you just mentioned
Yeah, speaking of first-round picks, kind of how you said you put Alontae and Kool-Aid right next to each other. I think on my list, I have these guys right next to each other. Brian Bresee just has a little head start. I predict Fuaga passes him up because I just think there's a little bit more pedigree there. But Bresee did it, and we've talked about this a few times. I know Nick, I won't put words in his mouth. He'll talk about him in a second. But so we probably slept on how good his rookie year was. There were injury concerns with Brian Bresee, and those did not play out. He played a full season. He didn't really hit a rookie wall necessarily at any point. And for a defensive tackle finishing his rookie year with 4.5 sacks, he's one of the biggest reasons for optimism on this team.
Where'd you guys have him?
I had him at
Probably
17.
right around here.
Yeah, I had him at 17.
I had him at 13.
Okay.
Mike,
Let's
you
see.
had him at 16. So
16.
Yeah.
you're right on the money.
Yep.
Where we ended up at.
I think he might end up. I don't know. Like I could see Brian Bresee. Like I'm just looking at other guys on the list. Like I could see Brian Bresee potentially at the end of the season.
Top 10?
I could see him above like a Carl Granderson. I don't know where you guys have him, but like I could see him moving up above him. Definitely above other guys ahead of him. I mean, look, 4.5 is a great number. And I think one of the things I just feel like he's flying so far under the radar.
Yeah.
Like he had so much like adversity and turmoil in college between injuries, family stuff, his sister passing away, and then you take that out. He had injuries as a rookie. You take those out. Like this might be the first time that like he's going into a season without his personal life and his body like in bad shape, and like he's produced put up numbers the whole entire time. I think if his college career plays out different, like he's a top 10 pick. Like I think that talent's going to shine through. I think he's going to be really good this year. And the Saints better hope he is, because if he is, like I think things change up a little bit up front.
Yeah.
Go for it.
No, I definitely agree. I had Fuaga. I mean, I had Bresee originally at 17. Originally, I had Carl Granderson at 16. And I think Bresee coming in there fresh, not having NFL experience, and being able to make the plays that he made last year warranted him being on this list at this point. And I think he can do nothing but just continue to go up, because the defensive line is aging and it's very thin. And I think if he continues on that track and goes higher, it can be nothing but positive.
He's got to get better against the run, though.
That was the question I was just about to ask. In your film studies, where is he at against the run? Adequate? Below average? Like what? I mean, a liability? Like where was he in year one against the run?
You could play him against the run. I mean, it's always the last thing for college guys. Like they come in, it looks different. You got to learn it. You got to study it. You got to learn formations. Like it's completely different. It's always the last piece of it. I thought he was getting better at it last year. He'll probably keep getting better at it. The pass rush stuff is really good. So if he adds that in though, like if he becomes like that complete player, like. Look, I really think this guy has a lot of potential.
When Dennis Allen talked about him after the draft, when Dennis Allen talked about him at the end of training camp, when Dennis Allen talked about him in week 17, it was always leverage, pad level. Like he's a tall, lanky, really athletic dude, way more athletic than we've seen from defensive tackles around here in a long time. But he can't let offensive linemen get that pad level advantage on him. That's the biggest thing he has to. And look, he's got a whole offseason to work on that. I expect great improvement there.
We're going to hit a quick break. When we come back, we'll finish off the list and hit the Martin's question of the day. Keep it locked to NewOrleans.Football.
Total Maintenance is one of the largest locally owned home and commercial service providers in South Louisiana. They were founded in 1980 and serve the greater New Orleans and Baton Rouge markets. And Total Maintenance wants to show some love to our NOF listeners. They have a membership program that gets you 2 tune-up visits for AC and heating, as well as club membership discounts of 15% on all repairs, half off of all diagnostic charges, and 3-year warranties on most repairs for membership clients. This is usually priced at the low price of $24.95 a month per system, but if you tell Total Maintenance that you found them through NOF, they'll lower the price to $20.95 per month per system for as long as you keep the membership active. It will never increase. Total Maintenance has a tune-up special running this summer for $79, down from the normal price of $179. This is a one-time offer for one system only. They also offer a free diagnostic on second opinions on units deemed to be unrepairable, and they offer free estimates for replacements as well as commercial maintenance programs. Services include AC and heating service and replacement, electrical service, plumbing service, as well as generator service and installation. They are Total Maintenance. Find them at tm-ac.com or give them a call at 504-841-3300, or if you're in the Baton Rouge area, 225-480-1000.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of stepping into your dream home. At Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union, we can help make that dream a reality with a team dedicated to you. When you partner with Jefferson Financial, you do so for the life of the loan. Having a single point of contact when questions arise is invaluable. Our experts are here to guide you every step of the way. There's no better time to invest in your future. Apply online at jeffersonfinancial.org. Federally insured by NCUA, Equal Housing Lender.
Martin Wine and Spirits is home to a selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and much, much more. They are family owned and operated since 1946 and specialize in wine, spirits, gourmet food, gift baskets, catering, and tasting events. They have many locations, so they're never too far away. You can check them out in Metairie, New Orleans, Mandeville, and Baton Rouge, or if it's more convenient, you can always shop online. Whether you're a wine novice or a seasoned collector, you'll enjoy the Martin Wine and Spirit experience.
Welcome back to the Oshner Health Podcast Studio. Our next segment is presented by Shawbear Insurance, the Earhart Agency. We're continuing our ranking of the top 21 players on the team. And finally, for today's show, we have number 15, Pete Werner.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know that he had the best season last year, admittedly, by them. You know, their moves tell us that he didn't. They've said it out of their mouths that they want him to improve and get better. I think we saw him have a really good summer. I think what we saw in those practices, I think it reinstilled some confidence in him for me. At least it looked like he was out there playing hard, taking advantage of things. We'll see when the pads come on and everything. He's going to have to meet the challenge. I actually had him 15th, so it looks like we're all kind of on the same page about where he's at. But I think that arrow is obviously variable. Like he could drop. Like if he doesn't answer it, there's somebody right behind him. It's not like there's a huge gap. Like if Pete just dips a little, Willie Gay is gonna pass him. So he's got to keep his foot on the gas. But until we see somebody pass him up, I think 15 is a good spot for him.
Yeah, there's no question. The Saints challenged him. Dennis Allen said, I hope he took it as a challenge. They meant it as a challenge when they brought in Willie Gay. I don't think Kalika Hudson was necessarily that, but he's another guy who started a lot at middle linebacker. They draft Jalen Ford, a starting middle linebacker from Texas, and Pete Werner's a free agent next year. So, I mean, there are a lot of reasons why he has to show that he's on the same track that he used to be on. I mean, man, we had him higher on this list last year. Before he got hurt his second year in the NFL, through the first, I'm trying to look at the exact number, through the first 8 games 2 years ago, he had 71 tackles. He was on pace for 151 that year. I mean, how would we be talking about him if he got anywhere near that number? And then last year he played a full season and only had 93 tackles. He doesn't do the splash things. He only has 1 career interception, 1 half career sack. Some of that third down stuff, I think he needs to be a little bit more dynamic. But I agree. What we saw during OTAs just kind of increased my confidence in him. I had already, as I mentioned, the buy stock in episode. It was him and Juwan Johnson were my first 2 picks for the guys I would buy stock in. I think we recently did bold predictions, and I said my bold prediction is that Pete Werner's gonna be one of these guys that we're much higher on. Like I think next year at this time when we're doing this list, I think he gets back closer to 10th than 15th. But obviously he has to hold off Willie Gay to do that.
And that is the reason why I had him at 12, because I didn't think he was top 10 because he had competition inside the building. But from what we saw during training camp and OTAs, Pete looks tighter. He looks like he's tightens up some of the loose bolts that he's had, and he stepped up. And even if DeMario dips a little bit or whatever may occur during the season, I think Pete, with somebody breathing on the back of his neck, is going to be able to step up and do it.
One thing that's really interesting about Werner, I jinxed him. I jinxed the Saints. I had reported this story about how good they were doing against tight ends and talked to Michael Hodges about it and was going to run it the next week when they had these tight ends coming up on the schedule. And Hodges said one of the reasons why the Saints were the best defenses against tight ends was Werner. Werner had really developed there. He came in doing a good job against that. And then I decided to hold on the story because whatever game it was that week, they had given up a lot to the tight ends. And then for the rest of the season, they kind of got chewed up by tight ends. I think it can be a strength of his, but it became an inconsistent area last year for him and the whole defense. And this year they've got a murderer's row of tight ends. So he's got to prove he can step up in that area.
Darren Waller's off that list now. So
facts. Gets a little bit easier.
A little bit of a strange summer for Darren Waller.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. Shout out to the music, though. The music is interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. A Kendrick concert a couple weeks ago, legendary.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Now it's time for our Martin Wine and Spirits question of the day. Martin's is home to a wide selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and more. Martin's, so much more than just wine. Today's question comes from Blake Baronet. Blake asks, my favorite butterfly effect moment of all time. What if Miami signed Drew Brees? Would Saban have stuck with the NFL? Would the Patriots have as many titles, presumably to get in a tougher division? And would the Saints have drafted Vince Young?
This is probably not just Saints, this is the football what if of all time because of the Saban factor. Yeah, Saban would have stuck with the NFL. The Dolphins would have been awesome with Drew Brees. He took the Saints, who were like a sad 3-win team, and they went straight to the NFC Championship game. Yes, the Patriots would have won fewer titles. Drew Brees would have won a couple divisions with the Dolphins. I think Drew Brees is that good. They would not have drafted Vince Young. I mean, maybe they would have eventually talked themselves into it, but this is a thing I've reported in the past. Matt Leinart was the guy they were highest on that year early in the draft
Doesn't
process.
surprise me. That fits.
Yeah.
That fits.
They were highest on Matt Leinart, but they kind of scrapped looking at quarterbacks when they had the second pick in the draft that year, and obviously ended up with Reggie Bush. You know, the other guy before their surprise Reggie Bush fall was going to be A.J. Hawk. Would that have changed his future as the broadcaster on the Pat McAfee show? Who knows? But so here's the ultimate what if. All right, so I think it changes. You know, Alabama doesn't have a dominant title. Does LSU have more title? I mean, so many what ifs. But here's the one I want to ask Nick. What do you think happens to the other quarterback they were thinking of signing, who was actually on a plane flight to New Orleans when Drew Brees signed, and they said you can cancel your trip, was Josh McCown, young Josh McCown. So Josh McCown and Matt Leinart are in here when Sean Payton takes over as a head coach. Drew Brees helped him cement his reputation as a quarterback guru. They probably would have tried another one along the way, maybe tried some younger ones along the way. But what happens to Sean Payton's career if he doesn't get Drew Brees?
Entirely possible, like that. His whole trajectory is different. I mean, there's a lot of good coaches who just don't get the right quarterback, and they don't get to have the career, you know. And it's just, it can be circumstance that dictates it. Like, personnel is so important. It doesn't matter how smart you are if you never get anyone to run it. So it's entirely possible. Like, if you come in like Sean and you tear everything down kind of the way he did, and then you don't win games immediately, like, you could lose your locker room kind of really quickly too. I mean, we saw the same exact thing happen with Josh McDaniels in Denver. Denver.
In Denver and Vegas.
He tore down Denver, got rid of everybody, kind of it was very Sean-like. It was very Belichick-like. And then, you know, they weren't great. They, you know, Tebow did his thing or whatever, but like, it didn't last. And then, again in Vegas. So if you don't win right away when you do that, like, you can lose the building very quickly. So it's entirely possible. And that's not really anything about Sean whatsoever. Like, if you just don't get that guy, and realistically, like, Sean survived some things that, you know, I think having the right team allows you to survive some of those things where if you aren't winning a ton of games and one of these things kind of happens, like, maybe you don't. So it's a fascinating what if. It really is. It changes everything. It really changes everything. How many more titles does LSU have if Saban never exists? And you know, the college football Alabama landscape, like, it could just alter everything.
Josh McDaniels was a really interesting cop because he's the first one I thought of, even though we're thinking of two different teams. Another one that pops to mind is Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll getting Russell Wilson. Pete Carroll's going to retire like a Hall of Fame genius coach. If he had Matt Flynn as a quarterback and they miss the playoffs and he gets fired, he's a guy who didn't have success 3 times in the NFL. Like, it is amazing.
He didn't get the right guy in New England, and it kind of faltered. Bill didn't have the right guy in Cleveland, and they were solid-ish, but like, they weren't really ever getting over the hump. Maybe they would have. People forget that last year kind of got submarined by, like, they were on the right track, and then they announced they were moving, and the season kind of went to trash. But without the right quarterback, like, Bill's he's not Bill. Like, it just really matters, like, getting that guy, and a lot of it is 100% luck.
At that time, I'm so glad that it happened because Drew Brees was so right for the city. He was coming back from that shoulder injury. The city had got messed up because of Katrina, and it was both just like a coinciding story of, like, recovery and being able to make things happen. So I'm very glad it happened. But
you don't get Reggie Bush either if you have to draft Matt Leinart.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. But, like, you asked a great question. What happens if Alabama, like, maybe Florida continues to be good for longer?
Yeah.
It's a huge thing. Maybe Cam Newton stays down there. Like, so much of stuff could happen, man. It's very interesting. They used to have this thing on the NFL network called NFL with, I think his name was Dave Damashek, and he went through, like, a whole whiteboard full of just scenarios, and it was really insane. But we'll never know.
We'll never know.
That'll do it for this episode of NewOrleans.Football. We appreciate y'all for stopping by and rocking with us today. If you want to look at the full list, become a subscriber to NewOrleans.Football /subscribe. Catch you next time.